"Hey, old lady, what the hell are you doing? This meeting isn't for janitors, is it?" The cruel baritone of Richard Collins, Pinnacle Tech's formidable CFO, immediately echoed through the boardroom, drawing every eye to Jessica Harvey, the older black woman in the janitorial uniform who had just entered. Jessica froze, her hands still gripping the cleaning cart. A flash of hurt crossed her eyes, but she quickly regained her composure, standing tall under the scrutinizing stares of the company's leadership. Richard sneered and scanned the room as if hunting for nods of approval. Nervous chuckles rippled around the table, feeding his delight. A few other executives smiled mockingly, evidently enjoying this public humiliation. At the head of the table, CEO Victoria Mitchell glanced impatiently at her wristwatch before speaking in a cold, clipped tone. "Jessica, finish up and step outside. We have to discuss the Westfield deal next. This isn't the place for you." Scattered laughter broke out again, the atmosphere thick with derision and disrespect. Jessica inhaled deeply, gently set her cart down, and met the gaze of each powerful executive in the room. Her voice was calm and steady, each word striking like a thunderbolt. "Actually, I wanted to talk about the Westfield deal today too, specifically why it's on the verge of collapse." Every laugh in the room died instantly, replaced by an eerie silence. Astonished, stunned, and bewildered faces turned to Jessica. Richard, who had just been brimming with arrogance, now stood frozen, the smugness wiped from his expression. The oppressive tension in the boardroom lingered. Confused and unsettled eyes remained fixed on Jessica, as if awaiting a reasonable explanation for her bombshell statement. But Jessica didn't rush to speak again. In that heavy silence, memories of the grueling early days spent building Pinnacle Tech flooded back, as vivid as if they'd happened only yesterday. Jessica clearly remembered the moment more than 30 years ago, when she was a young woman brimming with passion and ideals, harboring the grand dream of building a tech company from the ground up. Back then, no one believed that a single black woman could accomplish anything of real value in an industry almost entirely dominated by white men. She had faced countless doubtful glances, endless jeers and insults. Even the investors she pitched to had coldly turned her down, unable to accept a black woman at the helm. But Jessica never gave up. She worked relentlessly, day and night poring over design schematics and business plans, weathering every rejection and every wary look until she finally built Pinnacle Tech into a billion-dollar powerhouse, her pride and a testament to her resilience. Yet, after more than 3 decades of leadership, Jessica decided to step back and hand the reins over to a younger generation of executives. When the first reports of a severe cultural deterioration began to surface, she knew she couldn't stand by. Anonymous letters arrived at her office, and secret pleas for help from low-level employees suffering oppression and discrimination grew more frequent. She couldn't stay silent any longer. But instead of revealing herself outright as the largest shareholder, Jessica chose a completely different approach. She disguised herself as an elderly janitor and walked into the very company she had built, determined to witness firsthand the truth behind those reports and pleas. Jessica understood that to see an organization's true nature, sometimes you have to stand at its lowest rung, where people reveal their true colors most honestly. For weeks now, in her role as the frail janitor, Jessica had quietly gathered invaluable evidence. She noted every insulting remark, every act of contempt and denigration by the new management team. Each evening, after long days on the job, she would sit at her old familiar desk and meticulously compile and store all that evidence, waiting for the right moment to expose the whole truth. What pained Jessica most was discovering that the architect of this toxic, discriminatory culture was none other than Richard Collins, the very man she had personally interviewed and hired 10 years earlier. Richard, a talented, sharp, and ambitious white man, had always shown deference and tact in front of Jessica. But after she stepped away from direct management, his true nature emerged. Jessica remembered vividly a recent morning, her first encounter with Richard in the hallway in her new janitorial guise. She was bent over mopping the floor near his office when his familiar arrogant, icy voice rang out behind her, dripping with contempt. "Old lady, is your eyesight failing? This spot is still dirty." Jessica looked up to meet Richard's mocking, provocative smile. A few young employees nearby froze, watching uncomfortably. Jessica said nothing. She simply lifted the mop and cleaned the spot again, even though she knew it had been spotless. "You really are useless." Richard deliberately raised his voice so everyone could hear. "No wonder, at your age, you're still schlepping this mop around." Soft laughter rippled through the hallway. Some heads bowed, unwilling to confront the harsh reality unfolding before them. Jessica bit her lip, but her gaze remained calm. She understood that she had to witness every dreadful moment, feel each sting of humiliation, to be able to root out the rot from the very core. A flash of anger crossed Jessica's eyes as she recalled that moment, but it dissolved almost instantly, replaced by fierce determination. Now, in this high-stakes boardroom, facing Richard and his cohorts, Jessica knew she had reached her breaking point. It was time to speak up, to reveal her true identity, and to save the company she had devoted her life to building. Clutching the dossier of evidence in her hand, her voice rang out with power and authority, shattering the suffocating silence in the room. "I, Jessica Harvey, founder and largest shareholder of Pinnacle Tech, will not stand by and watch my company collapse at the hands of people like you, Richard. I know everything you have done, and I will never allow it to continue." Jessica's eyes locked onto Richard's, her unwavering, razor-sharp gaze the first thing to unsettle him. The woman he had once belittled was now his greatest judge. The battle had truly begun, and Jessica would not rest until justice was served and the legacy of the company she built was fully restored. Jessica's steely declaration silenced the entire room. Stunned eyes still struggled to process what they'd just heard. Richard fought to maintain his composure, but deep in his gaze a flicker of panic betrayed him. At that moment, Jessica's mind echoed with painful memories of the cruel behaviors she'd witnessed during her weeks in disguise as a janitor at Pinnacle Tech. The toxic culture at the company didn't emerge by accident. It sprang from Richard's arrogance and contempt, backed by a small circle of loyal subordinates who measured people's worth by the power they wielded. Over the past several weeks, Jessica had seen firsthand the series of terrible abuses that Richard and his cohorts inflicted, not only on her but on many lower-level employees. Young, passionate, and full of potential, they'd had their self-esteem crushed and been pushed into despair simply because of their race, background, or rank. One of the most haunting moments for Jessica occurred on a recent Friday afternoon. She was mopping the hallway outside the financial analysis team's offices when she overheard a young analyst, James Carter, speak up from down the hall with careful but evident pride. "Mr. Collins, I've identified some critical errors in the Westfield financial report that I believe we need to correct immediately." James, a diligent and bright junior financial analyst, stood at Richard's desk clutching a thick folder bristling with annotations and complex spreadsheets. Before James could elaborate, Richard interrupted him with icy disdain. "What are you talking about, James?" "This report was prepared under my direct supervision with our top finance team. Do you really think you are qualified to find mistakes in it?" Flustered, but determined, James tried to explain. "I'm sorry, sir, but I double-checked and noticed that the restructuring cost for the debt was omitted, an omission that could seriously skew the deal's valuation." Richard leapt to his feet, his face flushed with anger. A few paces away, Jessica gripped her mop handle, her heart wrenching as she saw the young man's tension. "You actually think you understand this better than I do?" Richard raised his voice so everyone nearby could hear. "Or is this your pathetic attempt to show off and climb the ladder? Let me tell you, James, there's no room at Pinnacle for clueless upstarts like you." James bowed his head, his face pale with shame. The surrounding staff fell silent. A few exchanged sympathetic glances, but none dared speak up. "Maybe you'd be better off brewing coffee or making copies than messing with anything important," Richard sneered. "You should consider transferring. You'd be a great fit on the maintenance team." A few forced chuckles scattered through the hallway, laced with embarrassment and fear. James trembled with humiliation, mutely apologized, and hurried away, avoiding the pitying stares. Jessica felt a stab in her chest witnessing it. She'd always believed in one founding principle. Every employee, regardless of rank or position, deserved respect and a voice. Under Richard's leadership, that principle had vanished. Later, while quietly mopping in a secluded corner, Jessica spotted James sitting alone in the employee break area, his head in his hands. She approached gently and spoke softly. "Don't let his words damage your self-worth, James." James looked up, surprised to see the elderly janitor addressing him, his eyes still red. "Thank you, ma'am, but I guess he's right. I haven't been here long. Maybe I really shouldn't be weighing in on big things like this." Jessica shook her head, empathy shining in her eyes. "On the contrary, you were correct. Your point about the restructuring cost is absolutely valid. I've studied that issue closely, and it's a serious oversight that Richard and his team missed." James was incredulous. He could hardly believe that a frail janitor knew so much about such a complex financial matter. You really understand this?" he stammered. Jessica offered him a warm, confident smile, her eyes bright. "Never judge someone by their appearance. A person's knowledge and capabilities come from here." She placed a hand over her heart. "Not from their title or uniform. Stay confident and courageous, because people like you are crucial to Pinnacle's future." James looked at her with deep gratitude, as a newfound spark of confidence lit his eyes. Jessica knew her battle against Pinnacle Tech's toxic culture was only just beginning, but in James and other passionate young employees, she'd found powerful allies to fight for the justice and respect they all deserved. After leaving her conversation with James, Jessica's heart felt even heavier. She slowly pushed the cleaning cart through Pinnacle Tech's gleaming familiar corridors, each deliberate step carrying an indescribable weight. What had just happened to James felt like a deep wound, evoking memories of her early years building the company, when contempt and prejudice threatened to drown anyone who dared defy society's limits. Lost in her thoughts, Jessica suddenly froze. CEO Victoria Mitchell stood before the elevator doors, her posture rigid and her eyes shadowed with worry. Victoria was always sharp and commanding. People kept their distance for fear of her cold decisiveness. But today, for the first time, Jessica saw genuine unease and uncertainty on the face of Pinnacle's most powerful woman. Softly, Jessica approached and stood beside Victoria in the cramped silence. As the elevator doors slid shut, Victoria finally spoke, her tone uncharacteristically unsettled and laced with restrained anger. "Why did you do that?" Her voice lacked its usual authority. "Don't you realize you've just made everything more complicated?" Jessica turned calmly to Victoria, her gaze steady and her voice gentle yet clear with purpose. "Miss Mitchell, don't you think your silence has made things far worse?" Victoria flinched at Jessica's words, flicking a troubled look before regaining her composure. "You don't understand. Sometimes we have to tolerate certain things for the greater good of the company. Yes, Richard has issues, but he also brings huge profits to Pinnacle." Jessica's reply was measured but cutting. "And are those profits worth sacrificing the dignity and honor of your employees?" Victoria met Jessica's eyes, discomfort and fear flickering across her features. "Do you think I don't feel the pain of seeing those injustices? I've witnessed everything Richard has done, and everything he said to James. But if I intervene, Richard will fight me every step of the way, and there's no guarantee the board will back me. Do you think a CEO like me has absolute power? You're wrong. I'm only human, and I have my limits." Jessica's expression softened with empathy. "I understand better than anyone how it feels to be trapped between responsibility and silence. But please remember, your silence only enables more cruelty to spread throughout this company. In the end, everything you're trying to protect will crumble if you let people like Richard run unchecked." Victoria bit her lip, her eyes dropping to the elevator floor, as if to avoid Jessica's penetrating gaze. A suffocating silence hung between them, broken only by the soft hum of machinery carrying them downward. "I really don't know what to do," Victoria finally whispered, weary. "I want to change things, but I'm afraid I'm not strong enough to stand up to Richard and the other shareholders. I'm scared that if I fail, the company will never recover." Gently, Jessica laid a hand on Victoria's shoulder, her voice warm and sincere. "You don't have to fight this alone. If you have the courage to stand up and declare your stance, you will never be alone. Many people in this company, junior employees like James and Diane Rodriguez, are quietly waiting for change. They need a leader like you, someone with the strength and bravery to say no to injustice and toxicity." Victoria looked up at Jessica, a faint but genuine glimmer of hope in her eyes. "Do you really believe there's still a chance for me to make things right?" "There is always a chance, Miss Mitchell," Jessica replied confidently. "The question is whether you have the courage to seize it." The elevator doors slid open on the ground floor. Jessica stepped out, leaving Victoria alone inside, her mind a tangle of thoughts. Victoria watched Jessica's figure disappear beyond the glass doors, feeling both ashamed and deeply respectful toward the mysterious older woman she had assumed was just another janitor. A short distance away, HR Director Diane Rodriguez observed the entire scene in silence. Her eyes followed Jessica's retreating silhouette, her keen intuition telling her that Jessica Harvey was far more than an ordinary cleaning staff member. Jessica's calm demeanor, her sharp, reasoned speech, and her deep understanding of finance and company strategy all hinted at a tremendous hidden truth. Diane quietly jotted a few notes in her small notebook. As a seasoned HR director, her instincts told her that this woman, Jessica Harvey, was about to shake Pinnacle Tech to its core, and Diane knew it was time to decide whose side she would take in the intensifying battle to come. While Diane Rodriguez quietly mulled over Jessica's mysterious identity, Jessica herself swiftly made her way to the small conference room where the senior leadership team was holding a closed-door Westfield project meeting. Her heart pounded faster than usual when, through the frosted glass, she spotted Richard Collins standing in the center of the room, confidently presenting complex financial charts to the company's top managers and advisors. Careful to stay in character, Jessica pretended to mop the hallway just outside the meeting room, close enough to catch every word. Richard's familiar arrogant tone rang out clearly, brimming with self-satisfaction. As you all can see, the Westfield acquisition will unquestionably secure our market dominance and deliver outsized profits. I've scrutinized every number and I guarantee there isn't a single oversight in this plan. Jessica listened intently to each word. She had spent days poring over Westfield's financial reports and immediately recognized the dangerous bias in Richard's assessment. 3 massive errors lay bare before her, yet no one inside seemed to notice. First, Richard completely ignored Westfield's enormous debt, restructuring costs, an expense that would dramatically inflate the actual valuation compared to his projections. Second, he had miscalculated the value of intangible assets, particularly the technology patents, leading to a severe overstatement of Westfield's production capacity and true worth. Finally, and most grave of all, the report omitted any mention of a major patent lawsuit Westfield was facing, a lawsuit that could inflict heavy financial and reputational damage once the merger closed. Jessica felt her chest tighten at the thought of these perilous mistakes. She knew that if Pinnacle Tech pressed forward with this plan, the entire company would suffer dire consequences down the road. But how could she stop it, still disguised as a lowly janitor? Suddenly, absorbed in her thoughts, Jessica's hand accidentally struck a glass perched on her cleaning cart. It slipped from its spot, shattered into countless shards on the floor, and the sharp crash ripped through the corridor's hush. Inside the conference room, Richard spun around at the noise. His eyes flashed with anger at the sight of Jessica standing outside, looking mortified. He stormed out, flinging open the door. His face burned red as he yelled, "What the hell are you doing out here, old woman? Can't you even clean without making a racket in the middle of our important meeting?" Jessica hurried to her knees, gathering the broken glass, her voice small and apologetic. "I'm so sorry, Mr. Collins. I knocked it over by mistake. I'll clean it up right away." But Richard wasn't about to let her off easily. He deliberately raised his voice so everyone inside could hear, his eyes full of contempt and outrage. "I don't know why this company keeps employing useless old people like you. Maybe I should ask HR what their hiring criteria are. We need capable young talent here, not a clumsy old woman causing trouble." Jessica bore the insults in silence, the words cutting through her like a knife as they echoed down the hallway and into the room. No one dared step forward to defend her. Lowering his tone slightly but still dripping with malice, Richard warned, "If you make another disturbance, I'll make sure you won't have a job at Pinnacle anymore. Understand?" Jessica met his gaze calmly, refusing to be cowed. "Yes, sir, Mr. Collins. I understand. I'll be more careful." Richard spun on his heel and slammed the door shut behind him. From inside, Jessica heard him smirk to the group. "Sorry about the interruption, everyone. Our cleaner just caused a bit of a scene, but let's not let this minor distraction derail our important work. Carry on." Jessica remained kneeling amid the glass shards, her hands trembling as she pressed them together. She felt humiliated, but also furious. A powerful urge surged within her, demanding she act, exposing every falsehood and injustice at Pinnacle. Just as she steadied herself to finish the cleanup, she noticed Diane Rodriguez watching her intently from a distance. Diane's expression was no longer mere suspicion. It shone with quiet astonishment and growing admiration, mixed with deepening curiosity. Jessica realized that the moment to step out of the shadows and confront Richard's wrongdoing directly was drawing near. But first, she needed to ensure her evidence and strategy were flawless, because even the tiniest misstep could let injustice prevail and render all her efforts moot. Bending down to resume her work, Jessica no longer felt like a meek, aged janitor. She was ready for the greatest battle of her life, the fight for truth, honor, and the future of Pinnacle Tech. After Richard returned to the meeting, Jessica continued to kneel and pick up the glass shards from the floor, her expression calm as though nothing had happened. Yet inside, a fierce resolve roused in her stronger than ever before. Richard's recent barbs had been the final straw, awakening the formidable Jessica Harvey, the same woman who'd accomplished the extraordinary in the past. When Jessica finished tidying up and straightened to leave the hallway, she noticed Diane Rodriguez quietly approaching, her eyes wary but filled with deep curiosity and concern. "Miss Harvey, may I speak with you for a moment?" Diane asked softly, quiet enough to avoid drawing attention, but clear enough that Jessica understood the importance of the request. Jessica nodded and offered a serene smile. "Of course, Miss Rodriguez." They stepped into a secluded corner, away from prying eyes. Diane studied Jessica, her voice hesitant. "Miss Harvey, I've been observing you for some time now. Honestly, I can't believe you're just a janitor. Your financial knowledge and your composed, confident manner, it's been weighing on me." Jessica met Diane's gaze, eyes shining with trust and determination. She decided now was the moment to reveal her true identity. "You're right to be suspicious, Ms. Rodriguez. I'm not just a janitor. I'm Jessica Harvey, founder and largest shareholder of Pinnacle Tech." Diane's eyes widened in astonishment, then softened with understanding and admiration. "Oh my goodness, you're Ms. Jessica Harvey? But why disguise yourself as a janitor and endure all those insults?" Jessica drew a steady breath and explained calmly, "Because I needed to see for myself what was really happening inside the company I spent my life building. I needed irrefutable evidence to make the right decisions to save this company. But now, I need your help, Diane." Diane straightened, determination blazing in her eyes. "What can I do? I'll do whatever I can to help." Jessica's tone turned resolute. "I need you to gather further proof of Richard's misconduct and that of his allies. Verbal abuses, discriminatory actions, financial irregularities, everything documented clearly, in detail, and with legal weight." "I understand," Diane replied. "I'll covertly collect internal reports, emails, and any documents related to the Westfield deal and other matters Richard is manipulating. You can count on me." Jessica placed a hand on Diane's shoulder, her gaze alight with fierce conviction. "I trust you, Diane. Be very careful, and make sure no one knows about this conversation." Diane slipped away, her mind set on the secret mission. Jessica stood alone, drew her phone from her jacket pocket, and moved to a more private corner to make the day's most important call. On the other end, the confident voice of attorney Eleanor Bennett sounded clear and calm. "Jessica, I've been waiting for this call. Are you ready to act?" Jessica spoke with absolute certainty, each word brimming with authority. "Yes, Eleanor, it's time. I want you to prepare a legal dossier on Pinnacle Tech's serious violations, particularly the discrimination, abuse of power, and financial misstatements by Richard Collins. I want everything laid out so the board can't deny their responsibility." "I understand, Jessica," Eleanor replied confidently. "I've already drafted many documents and have been standing by. We'll start right away. Anything else?" With unwavering resolve, Jessica emphasized her next point. "I need you to also prepare a management restructuring plan. Richard and his cronies must be entirely removed from Pinnacle. This is our chance to reclaim the company's soul, Eleanor." "Understood," Eleanor affirmed. "Everything will be handled as you've requested." Meanwhile, on the top floor, Richard Collins stood by the large window, his cold eyes trailing the corridor below. Doubts about Jessica's true identity and motives now gnawed at him with growing intensity. A sense of unease and looming danger crept into his heart. He snatched up his phone and barked orders to security in a tense voice. "Begin close surveillance of the elderly janitor Jessica Harvey immediately. I don't believe she's harmless. Track her every move and report back to me in full detail, and make sure she doesn't suspect a thing." After hanging up, Richard lingered at the window, staring out at nothing in particular. For the first time, he felt his position of power threatened by the very woman he had so casually dismissed. But Jessica Harvey was no longer someone he could underestimate. The battle for Pinnacle Tech had truly begun, and both knew only one of them could emerge victorious. From the moment Richard instructed security to secretly monitor Jessica, he was in a state of relentless tension. In the days that followed, her every footstep, every glance, and every minor action were tracked meticulously in the classified reports streaming back to him. Yet, despite his best efforts, Richard could find nothing sufficiently damning to stop this mysterious older woman, and that uncertainty only heightened his anxiety. The special end of a month board meeting unfolded in an atmosphere thick with tension. Pinnacle Tech's vast top, floor conference room, its walls floor to ceiling glass, reflected the powerful yet impassive faces of the board members. Richard stood at the head of the table, presenting the Westfield deal with supreme confidence, his voice booming as though to drown out the growing doubts in everyone's mind. Just as he was wrapping up his remarks, the meeting room door swung open. Every board member's eyes darted to the entrance, a mixture of surprise and annoyance crossing their faces when they saw Jessica Harvey stride in, no longer clad in janitor's coveralls but dressed sharply in business attire. Richard's brow furrowed instantly. "What are you doing here, Jessica? This is a board meeting, not somewhere you can just wander in." Jessica remained composed. She walked calmly to a vacant seat near the end of the table, her gaze sweeping across the bewildered faces before her. Gently, she set down a thick dossier and a small USB drive on the table. "I'm here because I have every right to be," Jessica replied evenly. "You see, I'm not merely the janitor you assumed I was. I'm Jessica Harvey, the founder of Pinnacle Tech and its largest shareholder, holding 67% of the company's shares." The room fell utterly silent. Board members exchanged stunned looks. At the far end, Victoria Mitchell lifted her head, her expression a mix of disbelief and astonishment. Diane Rodriguez, seated across the table, simply nodded once as if acknowledging an undeniable truth. Richard froze, his face paling, but he quickly forced a mocking laugh to dispel the unease. "What are you talking about, Jessica? Do you really think anyone here will fall for that farce?" Without a word, Jessica plugged the USB into the projector. The large screen flickered to life, displaying a series of clear images and video clips. One by one, the board saw footage of Richard and several other senior managers hurling racial slurs and insults at lower-level employees. The clip of Richard humiliating James Carter in the office, witnessed by many, forced even the hardest of them to look away in discomfort. When the videos ended, Jessica fixed her gaze on Richard and spoke, her voice ringing out. "This is the toxic culture you, Mr. Collins, have fostered in the company I built from the ground up. A culture where racism, discrimination, and demeaning employees have become the norm. I can no longer stay silent." Richard, now completely unmoored, slammed his hand on the table and stood abruptly, his tone threatening. "What game are you playing, Jessica? You think you can waltz in here and destroy my reputation? You'd do well to choose your next move carefully, or you'll regret this." Jessica met his outburst with unshaken calm. "I'm not afraid of your threats, Richard. I'm here today to end all the wrongdoing you and your allies have carried out. The board will make the final decision, and I trust they won't tolerate behavior like this any longer." Richard grew more agitated, nearly hysterical as he shot back, "You really think you can win? Have you forgotten who's been running this company? I'm the one generating profits. I'm the one who's made Pinnacle Tech successful. And you're nothing but an outdated old woman clinging to the past for scraps of power." A few board members began urging Richard to calm down, but he paid them no mind and continued shouting, "Let me make it clear. If you side with her, you'll pay dearly. I'll drag you all down with that old hag." Jessica held Richard's glare for a moment, then addressed the board in a measured, authoritative tone. "Ladies and gentlemen, the final decision rests with you. I only want to remind you that Pinnacle Tech was never meant to be built on injustice or hatred. I believe each of you understands the true core values of this company." Board members exchanged hesitant looks, some at Jessica, some at Richard, uncertainty etched on every face. The power struggle at Pinnacle Tech had been laid bare, and a single wrong move now could bring everything crashing down. Jessica remained standing, her eyes steadfast and confident. She knew that after today, Pinnacle Tech could never return to how it was, but she also knew that this reckoning was essential to save the future of the company she had devoted her life to building. The moment Jessica's cutting words trailed off, the boardroom snapped into an intense silence. The vast space felt charged, only the sound of heavy breathing and astonished glances breaking the stillness as each member weighed their choices. Richard, still seething, clenched his fist against the table, his eyes burning with hatred as they fixed on Jessica as if to crush her on the spot. Jessica rose deliberately, her gaze sweeping the assembly with undeniable authority before she spoke in a clear, decisive tone. "I have presented indisputable evidence of Mr. Collins's and several other executives' misconduct at Pinnacle Tech. I trust this proof is beyond question. Today, the board must make its final decision on our company's leadership." A long-serving director, William Harris, renowned for his integrity and respect for ethical values, was the first to respond, his voice grave. "I, for one, am deeply shocked by these reprehensible actions. Pinnacle Tech was founded on principles of respect, fairness, and cultural diversity, values that Jessica Harvey has steadfastly upheld. It's time for us to act decisively to save the very soul of this company." Several members nodded in agreement, their expressions resolute as they looked to Jessica for the final word. Without hesitation, she announced calmly and firmly, "Effective immediately, Richard Collins and all senior leaders directly implicated in these proven violations are hereby terminated from Pinnacle Tech." Richard sprang to his feet, his face flushing crimson as he shouted, "You can't do this, Jessica! You have no authority to fire me!" Jessica met his outburst without flinching, her voice unshakable. "Oh yes, I do, Richard. As the majority shareholder, it is both my right and responsibility to ensure Pinnacle Tech never tolerates behavior like yours. Attorney Eleanor Bennett has prepared the legal framework for this action. You and your accomplices would be wise to recognize that." Taking a threatening step toward her, Richard halted abruptly as two security officers, acting on Jessica's orders, entered the room. The confident, arrogant glare he once wore was now replaced by panic and rage. "You'll regret this, Jessica," he snarled, his tone low but audible to all. "I will make you pay." Jessica held his gaze firmly. "I'm not afraid of your threats, Richard. You chose your path. Now you must face its consequences." The officers advanced, escorting Richard and the other implicated executives out in stunned confusion. As the door clicked shut behind them, the room's tension finally eased. Jessica turned to Diane Rodriguez, her eyes warm with trust and encouragement. "Diane, I have witnessed your dedication, courage, and leadership over these past days. I hereby appoint you Chief Diversity Officer, with full authority and the board's unwavering support." Diane rose, her voice trembling with surprise and joy. "Thank you so much, Jessica. I promise to honor your trust and to restore Pinnacle Tech's integrity and values." Jessica gave a proud nod, then faced Victoria Mitchell, who sat in contemplative silence, guilt and shame on her face. Jessica spoke gently but firmly. "Victoria, I understand the pressures you faced, but your silence allowed this toxic culture to flourish. Are you prepared to accept your responsibility and lead a genuine cultural overhaul?" Victoria stood, her voice shaky but sincere. "I wholeheartedly accept responsibility. I was wrong to remain silent in the face of Richard's and others' misconduct. Please grant me a second chance to make things right and guide the company back to the values you instilled, Jessica." Jessica studied Victoria for a moment before replying with clarity. "I will give you that chance, Victoria. But on one condition. You must commit here, before the entire board, to implement deep, meaningful reforms. Any future toleration of wrongdoing will not be forgiven." Victoria nodded emphatically, gratitude and resolve shining in her eyes. "You have my word. I will dedicate my full energy and passion to transform Pinnacle Tech and set it on the right path." At last, the boardroom brimmed with a fresh energy and genuine hope. Jessica stood among colleagues united in rebuilding a strong foundation for Pinnacle Tech's future. She knew challenges still lay ahead, but with honest, steadfast people by her side, she believed they would overcome anything and restore Pinnacle Tech to its rightful glory. Immediately after that dramatic meeting, Richard stormed out of Pinnacle Tech consumed by pure fury. The parting words and glances he hurled at Jessica felt like a promise of a savage revenge scheme quietly taking shape. But Jessica showed no sign of faltering. She knew Richard better than anyone, and that he would never submit so easily. It wasn't long before the first signs of his retaliation began to surface. Rumors swirled through various departments as anonymous emails and messages circulated, sowing fear and discord among the staff. The company atmosphere suddenly grew unnervingly tense. Young employees like James Carter found themselves on edge, uncertain what the future held. Jessica immediately called a private meeting with Diane Rodriguez and Victoria Mitchell to address the crisis. Diane laid out detailed internal reports showing that, even without an official position, Richard was covertly contacting some of his old loyalists to create chaos and division from within. "We've just received troubling intel," Diane said gravely, anxiety in her eyes. "Richard is reaching out directly to key employees and applying pressure. His goal is to throw Pinnacle into total disarray." Jessica exchanged a look with Diane and Victoria, her gaze steely yet composed as she braced for the next battle. "I expected Richard wouldn't sit quietly," she said. "But beyond internal sabotage, I worry he might go further, perhaps leaking our proprietary information." Diane nodded slowly. "In fact, I've just learned, through a confidential source, that he's been meeting secretly with senior executives at our biggest rival, Global Tech. It appears he intends to sell them confidential Westfield project data and other strategic plans." Victoria's face went pale, her hands trembling. "If that happens, all the competitive advantage we've built will be destroyed. We must act immediately, Jessica." Jessica gave a calm nod, her eyes cold and razor sharp. "We won't let that happen. Diane, contact Eleanor Bennett, our attorney, right away. I want our legal team primed to move instantly, with every document in place to counter Richard effectively. I'm on it, Jessica, Diane replied. But our bigger challenge is gathering concrete proof of Richard's treachery. We need irrefutable evidence to take him to court. Jessica paused thoughtfully, then said firmly, I will personally direct our internal security team to monitor Richard's every move. We'll track every meeting and communication he tries to arrange. The moment he slips up, we'll have indisputable proof. True to form, only days later, security reported that Richard had met a global tech representative at a luxury downtown hotel. They provided photos and an audio recording of the exchange. Jessica, Diane, and Victoria convened in Jessica's private office to listen to the recording. Richard's unmistakable voice filled the room, dripping with betrayal. I'm prepared to hand over every shred of data on the Westfield project, including our trade, secret technology, financial models, and upcoming business strategies. In return, I want a senior leadership role at Global Tech. When the recording ended, Victoria could barely contain her outrage and disappointment. I can't believe he'd betray the company this way. This is outright criminal, Jessica. Jessica drew in a deep breath, her eyes colder than ever. Indeed, now we have clear proof. Diane, forward everything to Eleanor Bennett immediately. I want to initiate legal action this week. Richard must understand Pinnacle Tech does not tolerate treason. Diane nodded decisively. On it. I'll also coordinate with department heads to reassure the staff. We can't let Richard's schemes undermine our unity. Jessica turned to Victoria, her gaze firm but supportive. Victoria, now is your moment to show real leadership. I want you to address every employee yourself, publicly own up to our past mistakes, and outline the cultural reforms we're launching. That will restore morale faster than anything else. I'll do it right away, Jessica, Victoria replied with conviction. I won't let you down again. Jessica rose, looking both Diane and Victoria in the eye, her voice resonant with strength and resolve. We've weathered our toughest trials together. Richard thought he could destroy us with his petty schemes, but he was wrong. Pinnacle Tech is far more resilient than he ever imagined, and I, Jessica Harvey, will do whatever it takes to protect this company, no matter the cost. The three formidable women shared a look of unity and determination, ready for the fierce legal battle ahead. Jessica knew that to safeguard Pinnacle Tech's future, she would have to confront Richard one more time. This time, leaving nothing to chance. From the moment Jessica stepped into the hearing room of the California Technology Ethics Commission, she could feel the weight of tension in the air. Across the table, Richard's eyes bored into her with cold hatred, a clear sign that this confrontation would be anything but easy. The hearing opened under a charged atmosphere, as Chair Margaret Wilson called the session to order. Attorney Eleanor Bennett stood beside Jessica, calm and confident as ever, ready to present the evidence clearly and convincingly. Richard sat across from them with his seasoned legal team, his face ice, cold, as though he believed he could easily turn the tide in his favor. Jessica scanned the room and locked eyes with Victoria Mitchell, seated in the witness gallery. Victoria's gaze was filled with remorse, but also fierce determination. Jessica knew the truth would soon be fully laid bare before the commission. Let us begin the hearing, Chair Wilson intoned. Ms. Jessica Harvey, please present your allegations against Mr. Richard Collins before the commission. Jessica rose and spoke in a clear, steady voice. Esteemed members of the commission, I stand before you today with the responsibility to defend the honor and future of Pinnacle Tech, the company I founded and built with my own life's work. Mr. Richard Collins, former CFO of Pinnacle, not only deliberately fostered a toxic workplace through serious discriminatory conduct, but also egregiously violated professional ethics by conspiring to sell confidential information to a competitor. Richard jumped to his feet, interrupting with a harsh tone. "This is all fabrications. This is a malicious scheme by Jessica Harvey to destroy my reputation and sow chaos within Pinnacle Tech, a company I helped build into its current success." Chair Wilson sharply admonished him to remain calm and maintain decorum, but Richard continued, agitated. "Jessica is abusing her position as the largest shareholder to manipulate the entire company, removing anyone who doesn't support her and creating severe internal instability. I am the true victim of a targeted smear campaign." Attorney Eleanor Bennett rose, her voice firm. "We have clear, compelling evidence that Mr. Richard Collins did indeed conspire to sell Pinnacle's critical trade secrets to our competitor Global Tech." Eleanor swiftly presented the commission with audio recordings and clear images of Richard's clandestine meeting with a Global Tech representative. The playback of those conversations was unmistakable. Richard scowled, clenching his fists, but stubbornly protested, "All of this is doctored. I never sold any secrets of Pinnacle. Jessica and her attorney are orchestrating this to ruin my career." Amid the rising tension, Chair Wilson turned to Victoria Mitchell, who was waiting in the gallery, and solemnly called her to the witness stand. "Miss Victoria Mitchell, could you please share what you know about the allegations against Mr. Collins?" Victoria approached, her face anxious, but her eyes unwavering as she faced Richard. Her voice trembled at first, then grew strong. "I affirm before the commission that Mr. Richard Collins intentionally created a workplace filled with fear and pressure at Pinnacle Tech. I witnessed him repeatedly insulting and belittling junior employees, especially people of color and women. Mr. Collins also directly threatened me on numerous occasions to force my silence about his wrongdoing." Victoria took a deep breath and continued, her voice filled with emotion. "I admit I made a grave mistake by staying silent and turning a blind eye to these actions. But today, I want to make clear that Richard threatened me repeatedly. If I stood up against him, he would destroy my career and reputation by any means." Victoria's testimony fell into an absolute hush. Richard's expression twisted into rage as he leapt to his feet, pointing angrily at her. "You're lying. I never threatened you. You and Jessica are conspiring against me." Victoria remained composed, looking him squarely in the eye. "No, Richard, I stayed silent out of fear, but I am no longer afraid. I would rather lose everything than let the truth remain hidden." Chair Wilson sternly ordered Richard to sit down, but he shouted defiantly, "You will all regret this decision. I won't let this stand." Jessica faced Richard directly, her voice ringing out in the charged room. "Richard, you were once someone I trusted, but you chose a path of wrongdoing. I never intended to destroy you. Your own decisions and actions have done that." The commission members exchanged glances, recognizing that the truth had never been more clear. Chair Wilson spoke with gravitas. "We have heard sufficient evidence and testimony to render our decision. This hearing is now adjourned. We will issue our official findings soon." Jessica exhaled, relief mingling with resolve across her face. The legal battle was not yet over, but she knew today's hearing marked a pivotal turning point, bringing truth and justice closer than ever. Richard stood in silence, his eyes burning with rage as Jessica and Victoria left the courtroom. The fight was far from done, but he now understood fully that Jessica Harvey was not a woman to be underestimated. On the contrary, she stood stronger than ever, determined to expose the truth and defend the honor and future of Pinnacle Tech with everything she had. The moment the courtroom door closed behind her, Jessica felt a weight lift from her shoulders, yet she knew the fight was far from over. In the days that followed, tension at Pinnacle Tech was palpable, every employee holding their breath for the California Technology Ethics Commission's final ruling. At last, the announcement day arrived. Jessica, Diane, and Victoria sat together in the executive suite, watching the live broadcast from the Commission's headquarters. On the big screen, Chair Margaret Wilson appeared, her expression grave, her voice clear and resolute. After careful review of all evidence and testimony, this commission hereby finds Mr. Richard Collins guilty of multiple serious violations, including systemic discrimination, fostering a toxic work environment, and willfully conspiring to sell Pinnacle Tech's confidential information. Effective immediately, Mr. Collins's executive license is revoked, and his case will be referred to the District Attorney's Office for criminal prosecution. As the broadcast ended, Victoria and Diane turned to Jessica, relief and gratitude shining in their eyes. Jessica offered a small, calm smile. "We've won a crucial victory, but it's only the first step on our journey to rebuild Pinnacle. The hardest work still lies ahead." Over the next several weeks, Pinnacle Tech underwent its most profound transformation ever. Jessica took the lead on reshaping the company culture, working closely with Diane Rodriguez, now Chief Diversity Officer, to roll out bold new policies on diversity, equity, and inclusion. Town, hall-style meetings became a regular fixture. Jessica addressed the entire staff, candidly acknowledging past missteps and outlining an ambitious vision for the future. With transparency and empathy, Pinnacle Tech steadily became an open, humane workplace. Jessica herself spearheaded the first wave of promotions for talented individuals who'd been held back under the old regime. One morning, she and Diane summoned James Carter to the executive office. "James," Jessica said earnestly, "I've watched your courage and skill these past months. I'd like to offer you a new opportunity, a senior management role in our financial analysis team. Pinnacle needs people of your integrity, passion, and dedication." James was overcome with emotion, nodding repeatedly, tears in his eyes. "I promise I won't let you down, Miss Harvey. I'll give my all and never repeat past mistakes." Shortly thereafter, Jessica called in Zoe Patterson, a brilliant young software engineer who'd repeatedly been passed over under Richard's tenure. Jessica regarded Zoe with warmth and seriousness. "Zoe, I've reviewed your record and know you deserve the lead, engineer position you missed out on before. Effective today, I'm appointing you to that role. Pinnacle needs strong, outstanding women like you." Zoe's joy spilled over into tears as she fought to speak. "I don't know how to express my gratitude. I pledge to use all my experience and skills to make Pinnacle Tech a company we can all be proud of." Meanwhile, in a dim corner of his apartment, Richard Collins sat glued to the news. Bitterness and disappointment etched on his face. His future lay shrouded in legal jeopardy, and the once illustrious career he'd built was crumbling before him. He realized that every scheme had failed against Jessica Harvey's resolve and intelligence. He knew he had lost any chance of a comeback, and that the price for his misdeeds was imminent. Back at Pinnacle Tech's headquarters, Victoria stood beside Jessica, her tone contrite yet hopeful. "Jessica, I know I made many mistakes," she said softly, "but I promise that from now on I will dedicate myself to rebuilding Pinnacle Tech on the highest ethical standards." Jessica placed a reassuring hand on Victoria's shoulder, her gaze full of understanding and faith. "I trust you, Victoria. We've all stumbled at times, but what matters is owning our mistakes and making them right. Let's work together to restore Pinnacle to its rightful place." The culture overhaul rippled through every corner of the company. Regular diversity and inclusion training sessions were instituted, merit-based promotion policies rolled out, and employees once marginalized now stood proudly recognized for their true value. Jessica Harvey, the woman who had once disguised herself as an elderly janitor to uncover the company's hidden rot, now stood at the helm of Pinnacle Tech's spiritual revival. She looked out over the bright, bustling office, alive with a fresh sense of purpose and positivity, and knew that every sacrifice she'd made had been worth it. Richard's downfall stemmed not only from his moral failings, but also from underestimating the power of honesty, courage, and unity. Jessica understood that the fight for justice was far from over, but she took solace in knowing that today, Pinnacle Tech had embarked on a new chapter, one of renewal and hope. The future of the company, and of Jessica herself, had never seemed so bright. The victory and ensuing wave of cultural reform at Pinnacle Tech proved far more than an internal matter. What Jessica and her team accomplished quickly rippled outward, sparking a powerful movement that reshaped the entire technology sector. Major newspapers and leading media outlets began covering Pinnacle Tech as a flagship example of why building corporate culture on ethical values and social inclusion is critical. At first, some of the industry's biggest players watched warily and remained silent. But mounting public pressure, from the press, from their own employees and from consumers, forced a comprehensive reevaluation of internal policies and cultural values. A host of celebrated Silicon Valley names, Global Tech, New Horizon Systems, and Summit Innovations among them, soon announced far-reaching reforms, revamped HR policies, leadership diversification initiatives, and transparent promotion processes. When Jessica was invited to speak at a technology leadership forum in San Francisco alongside the industry's top executives, she shared her story and underscored the importance of courage and ethical responsibility in leadership. I believe that true success is measured not only by profit, but by how we treat every individual in our organization. Pinnacle Tech learned this lesson the hard way. My hope is that others will not have to repeat our mistakes. It's time to rebuild our core values around diversity, inclusion, and respect for every person. Her impassioned address became the spark for a formal movement, and she emerged as its rallying figure. Before long, Jessica founded the Tech Equity Coalition, a nonprofit alliance uniting businesses, leaders, HR experts, and social justice advocates, dedicated to driving corporate culture reform across the tech landscape. Under the coalition's banner, workshops, panels, and training programs proliferated, championing transparency in hiring, merit-based evaluation and advancement, and an uncompromising stand against racism, sexism, and other forms of discrimination. The initiative quickly attracted hundreds of companies, big and small alike, spreading a tide of positive change across the United States and, subsequently, the globe. Jessica's leadership earned her widespread admiration and support from millions worldwide. The story of an older black woman who once disguised herself as a janitor to expose her own company's wrongdoing had become a global emblem of ethical leadership and the power of courage. Meanwhile, Richard Collins faced the gravest consequences of his actions. His executive license was revoked permanently, and law enforcement agencies moved forward with criminal charges for trade secret theft and corporate espionage. News broadcasts showed him gaunt, defeated, and bitter, a stark contrast to the arrogant, powerful figure he had once been. He became the living cautionary tale of what happens when a leader abandons ethics and social responsibility. Back at Pinnacle Tech, the new culture took root more solidly than ever. Diane Rodriguez, now Chief Diversity and Inclusion Officer, and her team rolled out continual innovation, regular training sessions, Employee led advisory councils representing a broad spectrum of backgrounds and equitable promotion tracks. Former victims of the toxic culture, like James Carter and Zoe Patterson, rose to become shining leaders within the company. James excelled in his new senior role in financial analysis and mentored younger employees, particularly those who'd been marginalized. Zoe, as lead engineer, guided her team to launch a groundbreaking new product, earning rave reviews from both media and customers. Jessica stood in her spacious office, surveying the transformed workplace. Employees now worked with confidence, purpose, and the sense of being truly valued, an environment she had once only dreamed of in her darkest days. Her phone buzzed. A message from Diane flashed across the screen. Jessica, the number of companies joining the Tech Equity Coalition has surpassed 200. We're changing the industry, one step at a time. Jessica allowed herself a quiet smile, her heart brimming with joy and hope. Every sacrifice, every struggle, every challenge she and her colleagues had endured had sparked monumental change, not only at Pinnacle Tech but across the entire tech world. She knew the road ahead would still hold trials and would not always be easy, but she believed wholeheartedly in the power of truth, in the courage within each person when given an equal opportunity. Seated at her desk, Jessica gazed out the window over sunlit San Francisco and whispered to herself a conviction she never imagined would become reality so powerfully. Every great change begins with the courage of a single individual, and together we have proven that. Jessica Harvey, from stealthy janitor to global icon, had done the seemingly impossible. Now she continued to lead a formidable reform movement, forging lasting, transformative change for generations of future leaders. The profound changes Jessica initiated quickly set Pinnacle Tech on a powerful path of revival. After more than a year of comprehensive cultural and governance reforms, Pinnacle not only regained its former standing, but also achieved record-breaking growth in the company's history. Financial markets and investors praised Pinnacle for its transparency, diversity, and strong commitment to ethical values, factors that helped the company far exceed initial expectations. Every office and workspace at Pinnacle now exudes a completely different atmosphere. Employees no longer work in fear or hesitation. Instead, they bring confidence, openness, and camaraderie. Weekly meetings are filled with laughter, and creative ideas flow freely, regardless of rank or background. This is the dream Jessica pursued for over 3 decades, a workplace where everyone is valued and has the opportunity to shine. In a quiet neighborhood far from San Francisco's bustling financial district, Richard Collins lives in a small house marked by deep isolation and regret. His days pass in a blur of memories and remorse as he faces the consequences of his actions. Old friends have drifted away. His once brilliant career lies in ruins, and he spends most of his time in silent reflection. In that solitude, Richard finally grasped life's greatest lesson. Success, power, and profit mean nothing without respect and compassion for others. Sometimes, in his loneliest moments, he recalls Jessica's calm yet resolute gaze during the trial, and for the first time he realizes a leader's true power comes not from imposing on others, but from uplifting, encouraging, and helping them grow. Meanwhile, Jessica maintains a special habit that continually surprises and inspires everyone at Pinnacle. Once a month, she dons a janitor's uniform and personally cleans offices, conference rooms, and hallways, always making time to speak directly with employees at every level. One late afternoon, as the sunset bathed Pinnacle's towers in gold, Jessica quietly swept the 25th floor corridor. She noticed a young black staffer sitting alone in the break room, her face etched with worry. Approaching gently, Jessica asked, "You look troubled. Is something on your mind?" Startled, the young woman looked up in surprise, then recognized Jessica. Though Jessica always maintained her humility, everyone knew she was the woman who sparked Pinnacle's transformation. "I'm sorry, Miss Harvey," the young woman stammered, bowing her head. "I'm just anxious. I'm new here, and sometimes I wonder if I'm capable of handling the job's pressures." Jessica sat down beside her, her eyes full of empathy and encouragement. "I understand that feeling. I faced similar pressures when I first started many years ago. But what matters isn't that you struggle, it's how you overcome those struggles." The young woman looked at Jessica with admiration and curiosity. "But how can I overcome these doubts, Miss Harvey?" Jessica smiled gently, her voice both warm and wise. "Remember, your true value isn't in proving you're better than anyone else. It's in getting back up every time you fall, respecting yourself and those around you, and lifting up your colleagues so they can grow alongside you. A true leader never diminishes others to elevate herself, she raises others up together." Hearing this, the young woman's eyes lit with resolve. She nodded emphatically. "I understand, Miss Harvey. I'll remember your words and strive to become the kind of leader who uplifts others, just like you." Jessica returned her smile with pride, placing a hand on the young woman's shoulder, deeply moved. "I believe in you, and I believe Pinnacle and the world needs people like you." Outside the window, the last rays of the day slipped behind distant hills, painting the sky in soft pinks and purples. Jessica paused in quiet reflection, letting the moment sink into her heart. She knew that building an ethical, transparent, and inclusive corporate culture would never truly end. But as she looked at faces like that of this young woman, Jessica knew Pinnacle's future was secure in the hands of people who understand the true power of respect and unity. Rising to continue her cleaning, Jessica felt a profound sense of fulfillment. She needed no fame, power, or wealth to be content. All she longed for was a workplace where everyone could say with pride, "I am part of Pinnacle." For Jessica Harvey, that is the real meaning of success. Her journey demonstrates that a leader's true value lies not in power or profit, but in courage, respect, and the ability to uplift others. Sometimes the most profound lessons come from those we least expect. The quiet heroes who build genuine value behind the scenes. What about you? Have you ever experienced or witnessed a story like Jessica's? Share your thoughts and experiences in the comments below. Don't forget to like, share this inspiring story, and subscribe for more meaningful content. Thank you, and see you next time.